Thanks again for joining us at the 2021 Sloan Sports Analytics Conference Competitive Advantage Talks, presented by Kager, also known as Craft Analytics Group. My name is Emily Johnson, and I'm a first-year MBA student at MIT Sloan, and it's my pleasure to introduce our presentation, How to Meet Your Fans' Netflix-Level Expectations. Please join me in welcoming our speaker, Kendall Tyson, to the stage.
Thank you, Emily. I am super excited to be here to speak on this topic. We, in the last year, have gone through a global pandemic, and we, as part of that, have really entered a new digital content era. And for me, as a lover of really three things that are combined in this presentation, which are sport, TV, and data, I'm really excited to bring this presentation to you guys on how to meet your fans' Netflix level expectations. I am Kendall Tyson. I'm the VP of Strategy and Business Intelligence at the Seattle Kraken. So let's kind of start here. We'll kick things off and address three key questions throughout this presentation. First, we'll start with, what are these kind of Netflix level expectations that I speak of? Second, we'll dive into kind of how to design a data architecture that supports those expectations. And lastly, we'll talk about how to utilize the data to meet fans' expectations. So as I mentioned, I'm a lover of sports, TV, and data. And I remember the days of filming and setting a timer on my TV to make sure that I didn't miss Total Request Live or TRL in middle school. I remember being, very adamant with my mom that we had to finish dinner in time so I could watch TGIF or make sure I made it to see Grey's Anatomy. But in reality, nowadays, kind of watching programming, particularly content at a specific time on a specific channel, is really reserved for sports and news. And when we think about watching sitcoms, much of this has transitioned to more of an on-demand kind of content viewing experience, with Netflix really kind of leading the way on how we think about and how we experience that content. And here are some things that I think Netflix does incredibly well. And I should say that, not to say that other platforms don't do this, because they certainly do. I think these four things are worth really calling out as to how I've seen my own expectations really change. And as I talk to peers and others, I see they're changing as well. The first one is around personalization. So the fact that when you log in, there's actually different accounts for you or your husband or your kids. They all roll up under the same umbrella, but they have different experiences based on who is on and who's watching at that time. The next piece is around customization, and I think this is just super, super cool. So a huge fan of the show Stranger Things, and this graphic here you see on the right is the thumbnail that would appear when you log in and you're watching your Netflix. That thumbnail actually changes person to person based on your previous viewing history and the data and algorithm that they have. I think that's just so neat. The third is automation. One of the pieces that I've really enjoyed is that you don't have to do anything in order for it to know your behavior or know your likes or your dislikes. Then it's a huge piece around machine learning and learning from my behavior and the actions that I'm taking. And then the last piece is cross promotion, right? This is the, since you've watched this, you might be interested in these shows. What I appreciate about that is it's a useful use of my data. All right. There's lots of companies and experiences where you see that you're like, man, I'm giving you all this information, but I'm not sure it's really valuing me as a consumer. And this is one area where I feel like digital content has gone and done things really well, is to actually use your data and information to provide benefit back to you. So what's holding things back? Sports and entertainment is certainly, an incredible industry, but there are some pieces that are kind of perhaps holding us back from meeting some of these expectations from our fans. The first one is around legacy systems, whether it's challenges with limited access or ability to transfer information from old systems, that certainly causes a challenge. The second one I hear a lot is around an aging fan base. So you'll hear things around, we're not sure if our fans are going to adopt to things like mobile ticketing or mobile food and beverage ordering, or other ways of paying in a digital format. And the last piece is around information scattering or siloed data. And that's the area that I'm going to kind of focus this presentation on, is around this kind of siloed data and how to address some challenges there. So as we take a deep dive, this is something that's very common, and it's not unique to the sports and entertainment industry, the challenges of siloed data. But what we tend to see here is that information and fan data tends to be segmented into the technology and the department that kind of owns that technology. So thinking about, your season ticket member tickets tend to be within your sales and ticketing group. Your concert goers and their purchases tend to align with the venue. Same thing with, food and beverage or retail. Your foundation often keeps its own separate database of donors and how much they've donated. And lastly, from a community standpoint, for those that own, practice facilities or community centers, any of that kind of event or program participation tends to be even separate from there. And we've all experienced the challenges and the consequences of this separation, right? You get multiple emails from the same or similar organizations, and you really kind of get bombarded in many ways, and it's hard to kind of align all of them together and say, okay, here's what is my holistic picture and how I am involved as a fan of one team or an arena and all the different things that I do and I'm involved in. And so what we want to do is really kind of put the fan at the center here. And we'll talk a little bit about it conceptually before I kind of dive into, the more formal data architecture of it. But essentially, we want to create a 360 view of the fan by putting the fan at the center. And what that means is we'll start by identifying sources. So the same kind of buckets that you saw on the previous page that were in the silos, you'll now see kind of around the picture of the fan here. We're going to pull the data from those various third-party and owned sources, and we're going to pull them into data storage. Then we're going to create a unified record, meaning we're going to use a unique identifier to define, let's use me as an example, Kendall. And then we're going to link the information that comes from the variety of systems to that record, that one record of Kendall. And then the last step up to it is, kind of getting back to my example with Netflix is, okay, great. Now you have this information about me. You've unified all the data. How do we push it out? How do we use it in a useful way? And that's going to be the last step. So here we are, what's important when we start to dive into some of the details here on the back end data system. I want to first call out that the number one and most important thing is that we are safe and secure and responsible with our fans' data. It is, that is one piece that, all of this is going to have, significant importance to your business and create great fan experiences. But we have to make sure that we're doing the right things from a security standpoint, an ethical standpoint, and a responsibility standpoint to make sure we're doing right by our fans as well. So overall, this, architecture, I will also say, is really about providing flexibility. and flexibility for the future. If there's one thing that's, continuously changing, it's technology. And if there's, another thing that continuously changes, it's the technologies that we as teams and venues use, right? It is new things come online, right? The sports technology industry is on a massive rise, and people are doing lots and lots of cool and unique things. And so we want to make sure that the architecture that gets built has the ability to grow with us into the future and any sort of innovations or ideas that we may have. So we'll start by kind of focusing here on the left-hand side of the diagram. And what you'll see is just really the common kind of sources of data that we see within our teams and our venues. As ticketing, CRM, most people have a marketing automation system. We've bucketed together F&B and retail. In most people use either the same or different vendors for those. Your website, parking is always a big one. Whether you do surveys, post-event surveys or season ticket member surveys, and then obviously at the end, your mobile app. What you'll want to start by doing is kind of creating that list of applicable sources for you and understanding not only what that source brings from a data standpoint, but also understand who those vendors are. Because step 2 is going to be starting to understand the schema. So when you look at it, you want to think, okay, from our ticketing system, there's going to be a lot of information in there, and we don't necessarily want all of it. We may want a lot of it, but you want to make sure that we're really specific about which data elements we want to pull in. And you want to do that for each of the different sources. And then you'll want to talk about what your extraction options are. So what we've listed here is, we've kind of looked at, some iPaaS systems for API management, but you'll want to have conversations with each vendor to understand whether or not they have existing open APIs, what they offer from a batch upload standpoint, or if they have other methods that they allow people to kind of pull data and information from their system. And the last piece that I would say is it's important to think about what you're trying to do at the end, which is, remember, you're trying to create a unified look of your fans, which means as you're pulling information from these different systems, you're going to want to keep in mind that you need some sort of unifying data element, right? So it's something like an account ID or an email or IP address. I think in the past, a lot of people have tried, first name, last name. I tend to think that's better as a secondary, honestly, because, it makes a big difference if the first letter is capitalized, if there's spaces, if they spell it right or wrong. This can all pose challenges when you're looking to do a join automatically. Not that you can't get around it, but it does pose some challenges. So if there are other elements that you can kind of have more certainty in, that tends to be better. The next kind of section of the diagram is really about data storage and creating that unified record. So here, what you'll see is we've actually kind of recommended setting up 2 separate storage options. First, starting with a data lake, which is known for storing unstructured data. The importance of kind of starting things off, in my opinion, with an unstructured data store is that preparing for the future, right? Once it becomes structured, you're kind of locked in there. Whereas if you store it in an unstructured format first, then you can have the ability to take that information in the future and manipulate it into kind of anything that you want. And you could also very much easily change what that structure looks like in the future as well. I also tend to find that, data scientists, data analysts tend to go, find it much more efficient and see much more value in tapping directly into the data lake than the data warehouse itself. But, it depends on the person. The second bucket you see there is the data warehouse, and that's where you're going to create this unified record. So it's structured data. Think, one line item for Kendall and lots and lots and lots and lots of columns for, you know, all the different ways that I've interacted with the team, the venue, the foundation, or the community center. And then that is also kind of what the downstream systems, you know, tend to look into, is into that more structured data warehouse to pull information. And then the last piece here on the right-hand side of the diagram is really about pushing data out to the sources. So the first source you see on the right is our CRM. And really this is about arming the reps and the managers with new information to help them sell. From a manager standpoint, it arms them with new segments and new abilities to filter and create campaigns based on information that was not previously in the CRM. You'll then see a lot of kind of our front-facing systems like the website and the mobile app. There's a lot of platforms out there that you can use in order to create personalized experiences on those platforms. So for example, if I'm a country music fan who's on our website, that our website looks different than if I'm more of a rock music fan. And so you can kind of create those personal experiences by putting the people's preferences based on their purchase history. You can really kind of customize an experience for them based on that previous behavior. And then the last piece is this data visualization, and I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, which is, you know, how do your data scientists and data analysts use this information? And there's all sorts of things that they can do from a reporting standpoint. So here's where I think, you know, it starts to get fun. And, you know, I mentioned some of the examples on the previous slide, but kind of drawing back to kind of the four things that I feel like Netflix does incredibly well is I'm going to kind of draw similarities to what I think we can do here kind of in sports and entertainment that fall within those same categories. The first one is around personalization. You know, so for example, you know, lots of season ticket members, you know, have kids as well. How do you make their kids feel equally as valued as season ticket members as the adults, right? Just as we do events related to beer gardens, how do we also do events and activities related to kids? This tends to get separated kind of out into the kids club, but I do think that there's a way to really kind of unify that experience and make that the season ticket member feel like it's truly a family affair. The next one is around customization. And this is a great example from Manchester City here, which is a birthday email. And a birthday email is nothing special. But what I think they've done really, really well here is it's not just an email on the birthday using one piece of data. They also use information that's tied to the birth date, right? So it talks about some facts from the year that this person was born. You could also tie in, you know, information like a message from their favorite player. Under automation, you know, this is an example from Spotify and where I think on a venue side could be really interesting and an interesting partnership as well. But to say, you know, hey, I see that you've attended, you know, several concerts of a particular type, or I see that you've indicated that you like a variety of genre of music. Here's a recommendation of, you know, a concert or an artist that you may not have heard that's coming to our venue, but falls within that same kind of category of music that you might like. And then the last piece is around relevant suggestions. So this one I really see as, you know, an opportunity from a partner standpoint for cross promotion. You know, for example, if you have people who tend to purchase craft beer and you bring on a new partner, or a partner is launching a new craft beer, how do you tailor a really relevant suggestion and an opportunity for them to try something new? As a recap, you know, we'll kind of come back to, you know, our three key questions and just listed out some takeaways here. You know, things to keep in mind: your fans are making significant progress in their expectations as it pertains to digital experiences around personalization, customization, automation, and cross promotion. Thank you so much for listening to this presentation. And as it airs, live from a Q&A standpoint, as an avid TV watcher, I look forward to hearing your suggestions on top Netflix shows and other shows to watch digitally. Thank you.